Hi and welcome to simracing. After I finished the WRC 10 October update video, something kept bothering me about the engine and exhaust audio of the Ford Escort Mark II RS 1800 and the Fiat 131 Abarth. And I know what you're thinking, of course there's something bothering you, Sim. The engine and exhaust audio in WRC 10 isn't very good or authentic, is it? Duh! Well, even though that's definitely true, it's not what was bothering me. So I went back to check the TV replay footage of both cars and compare their audio on the same stretch of road, one after the other. To my surprise, it didn't take long before I realized they sound exactly alike. And that got me wondering, there are 37 different cars in WRC 10, but how many of them have unique engine and exhaust audio? So get yourself strapped in and let's find out. Now, how is this going to work? Well, I've recorded footage of each unique car using the chase cam. Afterwards, I grouped them into different categories. Each category, except for the final one, contains cars that have identical engine and exhaust audio. The final category combines all the cars that don't fit in any of the others and therefore have their own unique soundtrack. Right, let's start off with category 1, where we find all the WRC cars from 2010 up till the present. And just a heads up, you might hear some minor differences. However, those differences have nothing to do with the engine and exhaust audio, but rather with the speed at which certain cars accelerate or change gear, for example. Now I'll stop blabbering so you can fully focus on the footage and audio of each car in category 1. That's it for the first category, and I suspect most of you already knew the current gen WRC cars all sound exactly alike. But were you surprised by the Polo or the DS3? I kinda was, to be honest. The next lot contains WRC cars from the period between the years 2000 and 2009. There's not much else I need to say here, so let's jump right in. Once again, I suspect some of you, like myself, were quite surprised by this one. In category number 3, the focus lies on R5 or Rally 2 cars, which we will get straight into as there's not much I need to add here either. Right, this one was rather obvious, wasn't it? Even though each of these cars has a very distinct sound in real life, we don't get to experience that in WRC 10. Category 4 has been dubbed Legendary Toyota Rally Cars. Now, for this one you need to remember what I said about minor differences when I introduced the first category. You might hear some, but it's caused by the speed at which one of the cars accelerates or changes gear. With that in mind, let's roll the tape. To be honest, I didn't expect the Corolla to fit here, but it clearly does. Let's continue with category number 5, Legendary Lancia Rally Cars. And once again we need to keep the same thing in mind as before regarding slight differences. Right, let's take a look, or have a listen, you know what I mean. As was the case in the previous category, I was surprised by one car. This time it's the Lancia 037. Category 6 is labelled Group B Peugeots. This bunch is perhaps a tad bit controversial, as is the next one by the way, because one of the cars in question is an evolution of the other. Having said that, they are two unique cars in the game. I even went to check real life footage from both cars specifically, and they do slightly differ as well. I couldn't put them both in the final category where each car sounds completely unique, as it would defeat the purpose of the category altogether. So let's check it out. Let's move on to the next category, 80s Quattros, where we have somewhat of a similar situation as before. Now, I'm not using Group B Quattros because Michel Mouton's Audi from 1981 isn't actually a Group B car, but rather technically falls under the Group 4 regulations. Future Quattros like the A1, A2 as well as the later S1 versions do fall under those Group B regulations. So to summarize, Mouton's Audi Quattro in WRC 10 is a Group 4 car and not a Group B, whilst Blomqvist's Quattro in WRC 10 is a Group B. I know it's very complicated and confusing, but having cleared that up now, this does mean that each of these cars should sound fairly different from one another as they did in real life. However, to be honest, I can't blame them for using the same audio for these cars, as it's a mistake which is pretty damn easy to make based on how confusing the naming of these Audis is. Let's move on to a category where the differences between cars is a bit more obvious. So category 8 received the name 70s rear-wheel drive cars. I won't add anything apart from this, remember what I said about minor differences. As is the case for most categories, it's quite clear they use the same engine and exhaust audio. Next up we have the 70s front wheel drive cars category. Same thing as before, minor differences, yada yada yada, roll the tape. Once again, it's fairly obvious they use the same audio. And at last we have reached our final category labeled Unique. Each of the following clips are from cars that did not fit in any of the previous categories and differ quite distinctly from one another as well. Let's listen away. Now that we've gone over all the different cars, what are the conclusions we can draw here? Well, despite the effort, resources and time KT Racing put into revamping the engine and exhaust audio by live recording a certain amount of vehicles and using the Fmod tool to implement them into the game, we can say that this most certainly did not pan out the way they had hoped. Based on this analysis, WRC 10 only uses 14 unique samples of engine and exhaust audio, even though there are more than double the amount of different cars. The worst aspect of this in my mind is the fact that the WRC license should, in a way, grant them full access to the official teams and cars running in this year's WRC Championship. However, it's clear that they never did any live recordings of those cars. In fact, I have my strong suspicions that the audio samples used for Category 1, the modern WRC cars, are those of the Citroën DS3 WRC. We know for certain they recorded that car, as it featured in their video promoting the revamp. All in all, I was honestly quite surprised by the outcome of my little experiment. WRC 10 only has 14 unique engine and exhaust audio samples, which is less than 40% of the total amount of unique cars. And on that bombshell, it's time to wrap up the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if that is indeed the case, feel free to leave a like. If you want to see more of our content in the future, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. It truly helps out the channel quite a lot. Thank you very much for watching, good luck and goodbye.